There is a place within you that the world cannot reach unless you open the door. And most of us, at some point, have handed over the key. We let their noise become our anger. We let their ignorance become our burden. We carry words that were never meant to grow roots in us. And in doing so, we give our peace away, piece by piece. But what if you could keep your peace no matter the storm? What if you could walk through every room, every insult, every misunderstanding, and still be grounded like a mountain, unmoved? This is not just a lesson in silence. This is a guide to power. Not the kind that yells, but the kind that knows. Watch this through, and I promise, by the end, you'll no longer react, you'll rise. They walk into your life carrying things they've never named: shame, resentment, fear, hunger for validation, wounds left open for decades. But instead of tending to them, instead of healing, they project. They toss what's too heavy for them onto whoever will hold it. And often that person is you, not because you deserve it, but because you are there, because you are open, because you are strong. People only throw at you what they can't carry themselves. When someone speaks to you with unnecessary sharpness, when their words are more blade than bridge, pause before you absorb it. Ask yourself, is this truly about me? Or is this a reflection of something they haven't resolved inside themselves? It's easier to point a finger than to look in a mirror. It's easier to offload pain than to process it. So they project the bitterness in their tone, the coldness in their silence, the sarcasm in their praise. It's the language of someone who is overwhelmed by their own inner weight. You become the container they try to pour themselves into, but you must learn not to absorb what was never meant to be yours. Their anger, likely not about you, their judgment, rooted in their own insecurity, their rejection, often a mirror of their own self-worth. And still, if you're not careful, you'll take it personally. You'll make their wounds your reflection. You'll twist yourself trying to earn grace from someone who hasn't even given it to themselves. You'll shrink your light, lower your voice, soften your boundaries, all in the name of avoiding the stones they're throwing. But those stones were never meant for you. They're carrying too much. And the heavier it gets, the harder they throw. Not because they hate you, sometimes quite the opposite. Sometimes they see in you the peace they've never known, the confidence they've buried, the self-love they were told they didn't deserve. And that sight unsettles them because you make it look easy, holding yourself with grace, walking without apology. So they test you. They say things they hope will crack your calm. They poke and prod, waiting for you to lose the composure they've never been able to find. Why? Because if they can pull you into their storm, then their chaos is validated. If even you, with all your strength, can be shaken, then they're not so broken after all. Don't fall for it. Their load is not yours to lift. You didn't cause it, you can't cure it. And carrying it won't save them, it will only bury you. This doesn't mean you stop being compassionate. It means you stop confusing compassion with self-sacrifice. It means you learn to say, I see your pain, but I will not become it. It means you allow people to sit in the discomfort of their own reflection without rushing to make it easier for them by dimming your truth. You will meet people who lash out instead of look within, who shame instead of share, who tear down instead of talk. It is not your job to catch every blow. It is not your responsibility to defend your worth every time someone else forgets theirs. You are not a dumping ground for unhealed emotion. Let them throw. Let them spill. Let them speak from places that don't even belong to the present moment. But you, stay grounded. Don't rise to meet the storm. Stay seated in your stillness. Because the moment you react, the moment you take their projection personally, you've handed them the power. You've told their wound it can control your peace. And you've let their story become a stain on your spirit. Choose better. Not for them, for you. Not everything thrown at you is meant to be caught. Sometimes the highest act of grace is to let it fall, to say nothing, to move forward, to refuse to carry what does not belong in your hands. It's not cold, it's not cruel, it's clarity. And clarity will always serve you better than reaction, because people will throw. But your peace is not their playground, and your soul is not their storage space. Protect it, guard it, treat it as sacred. And remember, what they throw says more about what's breaking inside them than it ever will about you. They'll come knocking with raised voices and sharpened words, wrapped in urgency and ego. They'll send you invitations to chaos disguised as conversations. And some will even swear it's love, say it's connection, say it's necessary. But listen closely. You are not required to attend every argument you're invited to. You are not required to enter every room that reeks of control or step onto every battlefield someone drags into your peace. Just because someone wants a fight doesn't mean you need to lace up your gloves. There is power in choosing silence, not the kind that retreats in fear, but the kind that rises in wisdom. There's power in saying nothing when they want you loud, in walking away when they want you wrecked, in staying calm when they want you to crack. Most arguments are not about truth. They are about dominance, about distraction, about someone needing to feel like they've won something, even if all they win is your frustration. And many people don't seek understanding. They seek validation for their pain, for their opinions, for their unchecked emotions. They want an opponent, not a partner. They want a reaction, not resolution. That's the trap. They want to pull you into their storm so they don't have to sit in it alone. But your peace is not a gift you owe to anyone who refuses to find their own. There's nothing noble in exhausting yourself to make someone else feel right. There's no prize for who gets the last word. You don't get a medal for staying in rooms that strip you of your joy. You have every right to leave when the tone turns from truth to manipulation. You have every right to say, this conversation no longer serves either of us. You have every right to protect your energy like the precious thing it is, because it is. Every time you stay in a pointless argument just to prove your point, you trade peace for pride. Every time you raise your voice just to match theirs, you descend to the very level you were trying to avoid, and eventually you start to lose the most sacred part of yourself, your stillness, your clarity, your sense of who you are beyond reaction. They may call you cold for walking away. They may say you're avoiding things, accuse you of not caring. Let them talk. People who are addicted to conflict will always resent your peace. People who only know how to connect through combat will always feel abandoned when you choose silence over struggle. But choosing not to engage is not avoidance. It's mastery. It's refusing to be reduced. It's knowing that not every fire is meant to be fought. Some are meant to burn out on their own while you walk away untouched. There are people who will try to bait you every time they feel out of control. Their questions aren't questions, they're traps. Their tone isn't curious, it's combative. You owe them nothing. Not your time, not your explanation, not your calm. Especially not your calm. Because not everything deserves a reply. And not every voice that reaches you deserves your ear. It takes strength to stand up and speak, yes. But it takes a different kind of strength to remain still and centered while others spin around you. That's the kind of strength that doesn't break, doesn't bend, and doesn't get dragged into mud every time someone else forgets how to stand. If you argue with a fool, someone watching may not know the difference. If you argue with someone determined not to listen, you've already lost. You cannot teach someone to understand you by screaming louder. And no one has ever been healed by humiliation. So stop entering wars just because you're invited. Let them battle their shadows without recruiting you. Let them throw their words into an empty hallway. You are not their echo. You are not their sparring partner. You are not here to make their anger feel justified. You're here to protect your light, And sometimes the greatest proof of power isn't in what you say, it's in what you no longer feel the need to say. It's in choosing silence, not because you're weak, but because you've grown. Some battles are won by walking away, not swinging back. Some arguments are lost the moment you enter them. And some peace is preserved by simply remembering you do not need to attend every argument you're invited to. Some invitations are best left unopened. It happens so fast, a word, a tone, a glance, and suddenly your chest tightens, your pulse speeds up, and your mind begins to race. You feel it rising, the heat in your throat, the storm in your belly, the sharp edge of emotion that demands to be released. That is the moment, right there, that single breath between peace and reaction, that single second before your spirit snaps like a dry branch under weight. That is the moment you must choose to breathe. Not because breathing solves everything, not because a breath will make the problem disappear, but because it gives you back your power before you give it away. We are not taught to pause. We are taught to fire back, to defend, to retaliate, to protect our name, our pride, our space. But what if protection doesn't always look like reaction? What if true power is knowing how to hold yourself steady in the face of provocation? What if the greatest strength you could ever learn is the ability to breathe before you break? That breath, that sacred pause, is your anchor in a world that's constantly trying to pull you out of yourself. It's the space where wisdom whispers, even when emotion screams. It's the difference between regretting what you said and being proud of what you chose not to say. We live in a world addicted to speed. Arguments erupt faster than clarity can form. Decisions are demanded in real time. And in that rush, we say things we can't take back. We make choices we wish we could erase. We burn bridges in the name of urgency. But most fires don't start from hate. They start from heat. And heat can be cooled if only we remember to breathe. When someone insults you, you want to strike. When someone dismisses you, you want to be loud. When someone pushes your buttons, you want to push back. That is the natural reflex. But breath teaches you that you are not just a reflex, you are a response. And there's a difference. A reflex is automatic, it's emotional, it's raw, but a response is mindful, it's intentional, it's grounded. The breath is what transforms one into the other. The breath is where your soul reminds your ego that it doesn't have to defend everything. Breathe before you reply to that message. Breathe before you raise your voice. Breathe before you throw back the pain they handed you. Because sometimes what you're about to say isn't your truth, it's your wound. Sometimes the sharpness in your tone is just the echo of an old hurt being poked. Sometimes the rage you feel isn't even from that moment. It's the accumulation of years you never let yourself process. But the breath knows, the breath reminds you, you are not in danger, you are in discomfort, and those are not the same. You have been taught to react because that's what the world models, but you can unlearn that. You can teach yourself to pause. You can teach your body that not every emotional spike is a call to war. You can teach your mind that not every disrespect needs to be returned. You can teach your soul to stay rooted even when everything around you shakes. This is not weakness. This is mastery. To know when to speak and when to hold. To know when to defend and when to release. To know when the cost of reaction is too high for the peace you've been trying so hard to protect. Breathe before you break, because you are not here to be shattered by life's chaos. You are here to move through it with grace, and know it won't always be easy. Sometimes you will forget, you will yell, you will respond from the fire instead of the quiet. You will wish you'd breathed instead of broken, but every breath is a new beginning. Every pause is a practice. Every moment is another chance to choose differently. So when you feel it rise, the anger, the sadness, the hurt, don't run from it. Meet it, greet it, Let it come to the surface, but don't let it spill. Breathe into it. Hold yourself the way no one else ever taught you to be held. Strong, soft, aware. Because when you can breathe through the moment that once broke you, you become unshakable. Not because you don't feel, but because you finally know how to feel without falling apart. There is a quiet kind of wisdom that lives in restraint. It is not flashy. It doesn't need to raise its voice. It doesn't stomp or scream or storm out of the room. It simply knows. It knows that not everything deserves your energy. Not every look, not every comment, not every opinion flung your way needs to be caught, dissected, or responded to, especially when the cost is your peace. Peace is not something the world will hand you wrapped in ribbons. You earn it by choice. You keep it by discipline. And the most disciplined thing you will ever do is not react when you are expected to. The world will throw bait at you daily. Words meant to provoke, questions meant to challenge, moments crafted to unhinge you, and if you're not careful, you will spend your whole life flinching at shadows, proving yourself to people who already decided not to understand you, and trading your stillness for temporary victories that leave you feeling hollow. There's a difference between hearing something and having to respond to it. You may hear gossip, lies, criticisms, or projections, but just because it enters your ears doesn't mean it needs to exit your mouth. Not everything is worthy of your voice. Not every comment requires a defense. And not every person has earned a seat close enough to shake you. You don't have to be available to every energy that wants access to you. Some people speak from pain, not from truth. Some people confront not to understand, but to control. And if you react every time you're provoked, you hand them the keys to your peace willingly. You say, "Here, take it. Take my calm, take my joy, take my self-respect," just because you had the audacity to challenge me. But why? Why give them so much for so little? What if your silence was not weakness, but strength? What if your decision not to respond was actually the boldest move in the room? What if holding your peace didn't mean you lost? It meant you won a battle no one else saw. They may call you cold. They may say you're disconnected. But those who confuse peace with passivity don't know the war it takes to maintain it. They don't see the 1,000 battles you've already fought just to get to a place where you can choose peace over pettiness, where you can walk away without the need to explain, where you can hear your name twisted and still sleep soundly at night. That is not numbness. That is mastery. Reaction is easy. Reaction is automatic, but response, or the decision not to respond, that's intentional. That's maturity. That's self-possession. That's knowing who you are so deeply, no one else's version of you can shake it. Not everyone who disagrees with you deserves your clarification. Not everyone who mocks you deserves your retaliation. Not everyone who misunderstands you deserves your correction. Sometimes the most radical act of self-care is choosing not to let that message ruin your day. Choosing not to let that driver on the road steal your mood, choosing not to carry someone else's misery as your own just because they tried to dump it on your doorstep. Let them feel what they feel. Let them say what they say. You don't have to pick up what they dropped. You don't have to react to everything that is beneath your spirit. Guard your peace like the treasure it is. People will come and go with storms inside them. Don't let them set up camp in your soul. Don't let them rearrange the furniture of your mind. Let them pass, like weather, like waves, like noise you no longer need to tune into. You are not obligated to be dragged into a drama just because it's directed at you. You don't have to raise your voice to prove you're not small. You don't have to respond to disrespect with the same energy. You are allowed to choose grace, not because they deserve it, but because you do. You deserve to go to bed without rehearsing comebacks. You deserve mornings unburdened by yesterday's arguments. You deserve to live untouched by the chaos others try to hand you. Not everything deserves a reaction. especially not your peace, because peace is not a passive state. It is a fiercely protected place. And when you learn that, truly learn that, you become untouchable, not because the world stops trying, but because you no longer let it in. The sting of insult is sharp. It lands fast, often when you're unguarded. A word, a tone, a look, meant to belittle, to provoke, to cut. And the human instinct is to fight back, to defend the wound, to restore dignity with equal force. But the truth is, most insults do not need to be met with retaliation. They need to be met with compassion. Not for their sake, for yours. Because what a person says to you often says more about what's hurting inside of them than what's broken inside of you. Insults are usually born from lack, a lack of peace, a lack of self-worth, a lack of clarity. A soul full of self-respect doesn't insult. A person secure in themselves doesn't aim to dim others. When someone lashes out at you, they're not showing you their power. They're showing you their pain. And if you can see it that way, really see it, you won't take the insult personally. You'll see it as a confession, a flare from a heart struggling to stay afloat. Compassion doesn't mean you excuse the disrespect. It means you rise above the need to match it. You understand that pain often dresses itself up in pride and criticism. And instead of dancing with the hurt, you choose to stand still in grace. When someone calls you a name, questions your worth, ridicules your choices, pause. Look at them not with judgment, but with curiosity. What must they be carrying? What kind of day or life must they be living to throw that kind of darkness at another? Compassion is not softness. It is not naivety. It is strength. It takes far more courage to hold your center when attacked than to snap back. It takes discipline to respond with empathy instead of ego. People insult for many reasons: to distract from their own flaws, to feel powerful, to gain attention, to protect their fragile identity. But rarely, if ever, is it truly about you. And when you see through that lens, you take back control. You become the one who chooses the tone, not just receives it. Let them be angry. Let them try to stir the pot. You don't need to drink the bitterness they're offering. Let their words fall to the ground like dry leaves. Let them pile up without ever touching your spirit. That's what compassion gives you, immunity, not to pain, but to reaction. It gives you the ability to look a person in the eye and say, without speaking, I see your suffering, and I won't add to it. You can set a boundary without building a wall. You can walk away without storming off. You can be firm without being cruel. That is what compassion looks like in action. When you practice compassion in the face of insult, you take the oxygen out of the fire. You refuse to fuel their chaos. You deny their drama a stage, and slowly something shifts in you. You start to detach from the need to be understood, the hunger to be right, the impulse to prove your value. You start to realize your value has never lived in someone else's mouth. Compassion teaches you that dignity doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it says nothing at all. Sometimes it simply smiles and steps aside. And yes, you will be misunderstood. People will say you're weak. They'll say you let them get away with it. But let them say what they will. You're not here to manage their opinion. You're here to manage your own integrity. There is a deep, unshakable peace that comes when you no longer let other people's unkindness dictate your character. When you can see them not as enemies, but as human. Flawed, wounded, reacting out of their own trauma, trying to find control in a world that often feels like chaos. That doesn't mean you tolerate abuse. That doesn't mean you ignore toxic patterns. But it does mean you meet them with clarity, not combat. It means you say, I will not fight you because I see you're already at war inside. That level of compassion doesn't make you smaller. It makes you bigger than the insult, bigger than the moment, bigger than the game they're trying to play, and maybe, just maybe, your compassion will be the mirror they've never had. Maybe it won't change them, but it will change you, and that is enough. So the next time someone hurls a word meant to wound, pause, breathe, remember, what they say is about them. How you respond is about you. And you are someone who chooses compassion, not because it's easy, but because it's healing. There comes a time in life when you get tired, not from doing too much, but from carrying what was never yours to hold. You get tired of explaining yourself to people determined not to understand, of bending for those who only want to break you, of dancing through the flames of chaos just to prove you're still standing. And in that quiet fatigue, something sacred begins to rise. The desire to detach, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity, out of strength, out of peace. Peaceful detachment is not giving up. It is letting go. It is the moment you stop gripping the rope that's been cutting your hand. It's the stillness that comes when you no longer need to control the narrative, win the argument, or change the person. Detachment is not cold or careless. In fact, it's one of the warmest forms of self-love. It says, I no longer need to lose myself in order to keep you. When you detach, you are not abandoning people. You are abandoning the need to be tangled in their storms. You are choosing to step out of the battlefield, not because you've lost, but because the war was never yours to begin with. You are reclaiming your mind, your time, your emotional oxygen, because not every fire deserves your fuel. Not every situation requires your presence. We are conditioned to believe that caring means clinging, that love means holding on no matter the cost. But the truth is, real strength is knowing when to release, when to unhook your heart from places that drain it, when to bless people on their way and not follow them into their chaos. That is detachment, not apathy, but discernment, not distance, but dignity. When you reach the level of peaceful detachment, you begin to move differently. You no longer chase closure, you create it. You stop rehearsing the perfect comeback in your mind. You stop checking if they've changed. You stop letting their energy rewrite your own. Instead, you stand in your stillness. You walk in your own rhythm. You protect your spirit like it's sacred, because it is. Peaceful detachment doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you feel deeply, but you choose not to let those feelings hijack your actions. You allow yourself to witness the mess without absorbing it. You can sit across from drama and not sip from its cup. You can hear the insult and let it pass like wind through an open window. You can know your worth so intimately no outside voice can auction it off. And yes, detachment will confuse people. Those used to controlling you through guilt, manipulation, or chaos won't recognize this version of you. They'll call you cold. They'll say you've changed, and they'll be right. You have changed. You've stopped leaking your peace into every open wound around you. You've stopped bleeding for those who never offered a bandage. You've chosen serenity over survival. Peaceful detachment gives you back your power, and not the kind that dominates, but the kind that liberates. You stop needing to prove yourself. You stop needing to be chosen. You stop needing every loose end tied in a bow, because you realize not everything unresolved is yours to fix. Not every broken bond is yours to repair. Sometimes peace means saying nothing, not because you don't care, but because you finally do about yourself. It means walking away with a smile instead of staying with resentment. It means letting the phone ring, the email sit, the tension dissolve into nothing, simply because your joy is no longer negotiable. You detach not because you're hard, but because you've grown soft with yourself, gentle, loving, wise. You've learned that being available to every storm leaves you soaked and shivering. You've learned that people will pull you into their fire and ask why you're burning. You've learned that protecting your peace is the highest form of maturity, There will always be noise. There will always be people trying to bring you back into the chaos. But when you've tasted real peace, when you've felt what it's like to be free from the tug of war of proving, fixing, pleasing, you won't trade it for anything. You'll smile more, speak less, sit quietly in rooms that once made you anxious, watch old battles unfold around you, and feel nothing but gratitude that you're no longer in them. That's what detachment gives you, not escape, but arrival, not disconnection, but inner alignment. To detach is to say, I see it, I honor it, but I no longer make it mine, and in that release you rise, calm, rooted, unmoved. That is the highest form of power, not dominance, not defense, but peace. Let them rage, let them point, let them misunderstand, let them twist your name, mock your calm, and frown at your silence. That is their burden, that is their business. You have outgrown the need to be bothered. There is a stillness in you deeper than anger, a river of calm, old and wise, that doesn't rise for every stone. Learn to live there, speak from there, love from there, because in that stillness, no one owns you. In that stillness, you are free.